Representative Jim Himes on Gabbard's 2016 election claims, and Fed Chair controversy Face the Nation 2025. In a recent interview on Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan, Congressman Jim Himes, a Democrat from Connecticut and the leading member of the House Intelligence Committee, shared his insights on several pressing issues. The conversation, which aired on July 20, 2025, began with a focus on the financial implications of the Supreme Court's ruling regarding the President's authority over the Federal Reserve Chair. Margaret Brennan, let's dive into the financial matters, Congressman. As a member of the Financial Services Committee, you're well versed in these issues. The Supreme Court has made it clear that the President cannot dismiss the Fed Chair without just cause. It appears the White House is attempting to construct a narrative that justifies such an action. If they proceed with this, what could be the consequences? Congressman Jim Himes, well, Margaret, your last question really highlights the deceptive nature of the situation. Listening to the President's remarks, it's clear he's engaging in a con game. Anyone who has dealt with tricksters knows the routine. Promises of a miraculous turnaround in just 2 weeks. By August 1st, everything will be resolved, and the American public will be thrilled. This shows a complete disregard for reality. For instance, he claimed that tariffs are paid by foreign nations, which is simply not true. He also accused Jay Powell of causing suffering for Americans. If you had the chance to ask him, you could have pointed out that the Federal Open Market Committee, made up of 7 Fed governors and heads of central bank offices from across the country, appointed by both Democratic and Republican presidents, actually sets interest rates. The idea that Jay Powell is single-handedly halting a necessary reduction in interest rates, especially with the inflation we are currently experiencing, is utterly absurd. What we witnessed was a masterclass in manipulation from someone who uses inflammatory language like torture, which is not only harmful to the economy, but also poses a risk to the safety of individuals like Jay Powell. Margaret Brennan, just to clarify, that's why I mentioned it's not solely the chairman's decision, as you rightly pointed out, due to the committee's involvement. The current inflation rate, excluding the more volatile food and energy sectors, stands at 2.7%, with a slight increase of 0.2%. This data is what we are referencing, not subjective opinions on pricing. But is there any potential for congressional pushback? What if a tweet announces the Fed Chair's dismissal? Rep. Himes, interestingly, within the White House, there seems to be a voice, perhaps the Treasury Secretary, cautioning against this course of action. It's a tough message to convey to someone like Donald Trump, but if he were to fire the Fed Chair, whether illegally or by fabricating a dubious reason related to renovations, it would trigger a significant market reaction. The capital markets cannot be deceived. We witnessed this after what was termed Liberation Day, when the stock and bond markets plummeted. I suspect someone is warning the President that disregarding the law, which clearly states he cannot dismiss the Fed Chair, would lead to economic instability. The global economy relies on a stable and non-politically influenced interest rate policy, and that's likely what's keeping them from making such a drastic move. Margaret Brennan, Congressman, we'll take a brief break and continue discussing various topics shortly. Please stay with us. Commercial break. Margaret Brennan, welcome back to Face the Nation. We are continuing our discussion with Congressman Jim Himes from Connecticut, who serves as the ranking member on the Intelligence Committee. Congressman, I want to revisit a critical point. A bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee investigation confirmed that the U.S. intelligence community's assessment of Russian interference in the 2016 election was accurate. This conclusion was reached unanimously. I mention this because, recently, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has stated she is referring former American officials for prosecution, accusing them of treasonous conspiracy in a long-term coup against President Trump, based on the assessment that Russia attempted to influence the election. This comes shortly after the CIA director criticized the methodology used in that 2016 assessment. Is there any legal foundation for such prosecutions? Rep. Hymes, absolutely none. Margaret, what we witnessed from Tulsi Gabbard was not just misinformation, but a dangerously misleading narrative. When terms like sedition and treason are thrown around, it can lead to real harm. You noted that the Senate committee, previously led by Marco Rubio, now Secretary of State, unanimously concluded that Russia did meddle in the election to support Donald Trump. Even John Durham, a special counsel appointed by Trump, confirmed the Senate's findings. What Gabbard is doing is a bit of a sleight of hand. She claims that the Intelligence Committee initially stated that Russia could not use cyber tools to interfere with the voting infrastructure, which was accurate at the time. However, it is well documented that Russia hacked into the DNC and engaged in various influence operations, including purchasing numerous Facebook ads to undermine Hillary Clinton. This is not up for debate. What's truly alarming about Gabbard's statements is that they endanger lives. Right now, individuals on the far right are reacting violently to these falsehoods. Moreover, the intelligence community is filled with dedicated professionals who perform their duties diligently, and they are now witnessing their leader propagate a narrative that they know to be false. This dynamic is detrimental to the safety and security of the American populace. Margaret Brennan, the Senate report is publicly available, and its findings are clear. I appreciate your clarification regarding the distinction between influence and direct hacking. Rep. Hymes, if I may add, Margaret, regarding the referral, this situation mirrors the Epstein case. We hear about criminal referrals and accusations of treason against Barack Obama. Here's the reality. Let's wait 4 to 6 weeks and see if this administration, under Tulsi Gabbard, actually pursues charges against a former president for treason. I can assure you, they won't. There isn't a judge in this country who would take such claims seriously. They would be met with laughter from coast to coast. So, the real test will be whether the Department of Justice brings any charges in the coming weeks. The answer will be no, and we'll find ourselves in a situation reminiscent of the Epstein case, questioning why no charges were filed for such serious allegations. The truth is, it's all a fabrication. Margaret Brennan, understood. Shifting gears, I want to discuss another topic. Reports from the New York Times indicate that the DNC's review of the last election will avoid scrutinizing the decisions made by the Biden-Harris campaign. You were quite vocal early on, urging then-President Biden to withdraw from the race. You're known for your straightforwardness. Do you genuinely believe it's feasible for your party to accurately assess its shortcomings without addressing the presidential race and the candidates involved? Rep. Hymes, we must recognize, and the entire nation witnessed it during that disastrous debate in July before the election, that Joe Biden was not positioned to win. This was evident not only in the debate, but also in the polling data that his team was concealing from him. This is a fact. The Democratic Party is a broad coalition, ranging from Joe Manchin, who leans Republican, to AOC, a Democratic Socialist. Consequently, we often struggle to unify around a single set of policies or messaging, especially in the absence of a presidential candidate. A presidential candidate naturally draws attention and serves as the face of the party on a national scale. Currently, we are engaged in discussions that encompass a wide array of perspectives, which can be frustrating for Democrats disheartened by the election results. However, aside from utilizing the tools at our disposal to fight back, we must reflect on what we could have done differently to prevent Donald Trump's significant victory in 2020. There's a lot of anger within the Democratic Party, and I empathize with that sentiment. I experienced the chaos of January 6, 2021, firsthand and feared for my safety. Nevertheless, the priority now